Good evening and welcome back to episode 3 of the Poop Naked preseason podcast, season number 2 for 2023. Next on the docket tonight, we have our third from the bottom team in terms of max points scored, Mr. Ben Phelps, good friend, former coworker of mine. So let's dig in here. Let's tear him to pieces, shall we? So back here on Dynasty Daddy, that's the website that I've been using to kind of give a visual of how valuable everybody's starters are compared to the league and how much trade value you have. So really important to have valuable starters, but also a valuable team so that you can remain flexible if you're trying to contend or rebuild. You want as much value on your roster as possible. Each roster spot should be thoughtfully utilized. And so we've definitely seen a pattern with these teams that finish towards the bottom, maybe not as great of utilization of those roster spots, whether it comes to holding older players, when you're not in contention or just not having a lot of draft picks or whatnot. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use for Dynasty. And I think in years 2 and 3, it really shakes out on, should I be contending? Should I be rebuilding? You never really want to be caught in the middle. I think that's the quickest way to mediocrity, is to not realize a direction for your team and just kind of get stuck in the middle. And I think as we continue to do these roster reviews, I think it may give an idea, where your team is at and maybe help you pick a direction. Once you have a direction, the game is so much more fun because you're doing more trades and you're being just purposeful with everything. So sticking on theme here, let's go to the Cleveland Steamers. Very fitting name for Mr. Ben. He's always got that kind of, I don't even know what a Cleveland Steamer is. I think that's where you poop on a girl's chest, but I could be wrong. We'll definitely have to get this from Ben at some point. So right now the website we're in contender mode. So let's go through and see how it views Ben. Here you can see on the graph, Ben is 4th from the right. So in terms of total value, it's appearing that he's maybe closer to the bottom, closer to the middle. But if he has really high end starters, he might be more of a contender. Based on this website's projection, and keep it with a grain of salt because this is all based on value from the website Keep Trade Cut, which is people's opinions of players that they rate every time they use the site. So it's really just crowdsourced info. This is what the average Dynasty person would think each of these individual players would be valued with. It's not end all be all, but it's a good gauge of kind of the pulse of each of these players. So we'll go through positions. In terms of contenders, Ben has very good above average starting quarterbacks. He's got obviously his dream crush, Fat Pat Mahomes, looking to be king of the bath bombs, ketchup on steak. Very fitting player for Ben to have. This is probably the most valuable player in Dynasty, especially in a super flex league. He's probably untradeable. You could offer Ben a blowjob from Margot Robbie, and he would probably turn this down, like giving up Patrick Mahomes. It's almost never worth it unless you get just a stupid trade. It's a great piece to build around or contend around. Other quarterbacks, pretty good. You got Bryce Young, very good value. I believe in the draft. Yep, slipped to 5th overall. And that pick he acquired from Josh, I think that's solid value. Definitely a tough pick, I bet, for Ben at the time, but I think it was a good example of best player available. Rookie quarterbacks are almost always going to hold their value in a dynasty league. They're probably the second most valuable commodity outside of a future rookie pick. Even if they perform poorly, they're going to be insulated. Like, look at Trey Lance. He's had 4 games over 3 years that he's played in, and up until a couple of days ago when he got traded to Dallas for nothing, he was still, like, you could still get a first for him in a lot of spots. So good, always good to draft a highly drafted rookie quarterback, even if it doesn't necessarily fit your build. It's a great way to accrue value year over year. Dak Prescott, his super flex starter, also super solid. Probably souped up Kirk Cousins, a little bit younger, great decision maker, good weapons in Pollard and Lamb. Just like the perfect QB2, like one of the better ones. He's probably never going to lose you a week. He doesn't run as much as he used to, but he still can sling it. And I think a great piece to have, kind of regardless of situation. So, when I look at this room, I probably think it's a little bit higher than rank number 4. I think if he didn't have Andy Dalton, I think if he had literally any other even backup quarterback, this would probably be closer to like 2 or 1. Good room, and a good example of how these ranks should be taken with a grain of salt. Going next to running backs, definitely towards the bottom of the league. He's got guys with question marks. He's got Homer extraordinaire, fan favorite, Isaiah Pacheco. He's been hurt with a shoulder thing, capped by McKinnon, but he's the between the 20s grinder for one of the best offenses in the league. Gibson, very undervalued. This will probably be year 4 where they're talking about getting him involved in the passing game. We'll see, but he's always been like a top 14 running back for as long as I've been playing. Very solid, very good RB3 flex. Rachaad White, interesting lead back on a dog shit offense. Tom Brady's the king of running back checkdowns. He's not there. As Baker pushed the ball a little bit more downfield, I think he checks down at a pretty high rate. So Rachaad could definitely be someone who's very viable. He's a little bit older as a running back. I honestly think he's like 25 or so, but still not a lot of miles. Good player. J.K. Dobbins, love him. He's just so talented. Like, there's a great highlight of him coming off his knee surgery where he is running on a knee that can't fully straighten and he almost pops like a 60-yard touchdown. He's just so electric to watch. He's so fun. Here, Ben kind of got caught holding the bag on some older guys. Homerism definitely got him here. Mostert could be valuable, but he's just so old and always hurt. And then Lenny's not even on a team. So this could be a little bit higher than 7, but I think that this is probably a pretty conservative estimate of where these running backs were to stack up against everybody else in the league. Wide receivers, this is probably his worst position. He's got a lot of guys, Mike Evans used to be good. He's on the wrong side of 30. Sky Moore, projected as a starter, could be the wide receiver 1. So could Kadarius Toney. Could be none of them. It's probably Travis Kelce, honestly. So he's got some interesting flex players. Like, I love Jakobi Meyers. I traded him to Ben during the rookie draft, and I could afford to trade him, but I think Jakobi Meyers is very, very underrated. I have a feeling that he'll end up being a flex play for Ben during the season if Garoppolo is even average like he has been his whole career. Sky Moore could pop off. I think probably the most interesting piece on his roster is Christian Watson, like, very polarizing guy. Went to NDSU, which is my alma mater, so I got to watch him play. He's just so athletic. I think he's the most athletic wide receiver for height and weight adjusted, like, in NFL history. He's a freak, man. He's efficient. The question will be, if they give him more volume, does he maintain that efficiency? Is he souped up Chase Claypool, or is he closer to like Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss? But either way, he was really fun to watch last year. Definitely my vote for Ben's most interesting player. Tight ends, I think, could be pretty dark horse, low-key valuable. I think 6 here is probably, I think if he has anybody other than Tucker Kraft, this is probably a lot higher. He has 3 starting tight ends in the league. And Njoku could be very good if Watson returns to form. Kittle, I believe, had his best weeks when Purdy was the starter. So I could easily see this being 3 to 4 overall. I think 6 is really just dragged down by Tucker Kraft not being very good and Ben not having like a tremendous amount of depth here. Looking at his draft picks, I believe he's got all his draft picks on his team. Middle of the pack in terms of draft capital. So could be worse, could be better. Ultimately, in terms of contenders, his starters rank, towards the bottom overall. And I think that's mainly because of the wide receivers and the running backs here. If we go in terms of trade value, if Ben decides to rebuild, if season goes on and he's, closer to eighth place than he is to fourth place, wants to push the button. He definitely has some pieces that he can dip from. I think Mike Evans will be valuable to a contender. I think he's definitely got some running backs that he could part with. Dak Prescott, that could be someone that he thinks about moving if Bryce Young steps up in a big way. George Kittle's getting up there in age. David Njoku is fun. He's younger. That could be a really enticing trade piece. And, I'd be watching some of these receivers. Like if Sky Moore or Tony starts popping off, that would be someone I maybe consider moving, just to recoup some value if I do intend to rebuild. So looking at Ben's draft, I think he got pretty good value in a tight end premium league. He came away with arguably, some people's pre NFL draft tight end one. I think that's solid value here. Roschon is definitely in that second to third tier of rookie running backs. I don't think he's better than Khalil Herbert, but I think he's a lot more talented than people realize. So he could definitely, if they're a run heavy team, I could see Roschon increasing in value for sure. My favorite player from the draft, well, really, Bryce Young's probably the favorite. Getting him at 5, I think, was really good value. He's probably the safest of the quarterbacks and a tier B ahead of the receivers that would have been available to him at this spot. I think Jalen Reed is pretty interesting. He's a really good route runner, bit of an older player. I'm not super high on Romeo Doubs. So he could definitely step in as like the wide receiver 2 out of the slot for Green Bay. Interesting that he's got Christian Watson and Jalen Reed. So if the Packers really pop off in terms of passing offense, I could see, Ben's wide receivers looking a little bit better. I just am not as optimistic on Jordan Love as some people. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Ben has been really popping off with trades. Back in early April, he made a pretty substantial trade to get his first round pick back, trading Deontay Johnson and DJ Moore. I think that's a big reason why his wide receiver room is kind of the way it is. Bryce Young is probably more valuable in a vacuum than those 2 receivers, but in terms of Ben's build, I would argue that he's better off. He would have been better off with Deontay and DJ Moore. But if Bryce Young is as good as a lot of people think he is, then he's going to be a lot more valuable. I mean, he's going to be closer to like Patrick Mahomes than he is to, he's already valued higher than Dak Prescott, who's very good. So I don't hate the trade. It's just if Ben's wanting to contend, I wouldn't have made it, but it's easy to get rookie fever, and he got a fun depth piece in Tony. If Tony pops off, maybe one of these losing those guys doesn't look as bad. And he was able to turn that 23 second into a pretty decent running back, and then picked up a flyer tight end with that 4th overall pick or 4th round pick. Kept the trades going with Aaron. I think this is a good trade for Ben. Sanders and Gibson are pretty similar to me. So to get a 2nd round pick that he was able to turn into Roschon Johnson was pretty good. So I think Ben definitely won that trade. Here, acquiring Donovan Peoples-Jones for a 23 third. In a vacuum, that's probably pretty fair. DPJ is interesting with Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's better than Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, but he's definitely a tall, athletic guy. So it's possible that he could be better than I think. He was able to turn. What did Logan do with that third? So he turned that into Stetson Bennett. So not really a big loss there, I would say. Probably good. Really in the third round, there wasn't too many other players that he could have taken that would have been better. So I think that's kind of a push for Ben, giving up that. It's kind of a wash trade. Here, Jakobi Meyers for that second. I was stoked to get that second, and oh yeah, I drafted Achane with it. So, he's got a pretty full running back room already. So to me, I think that was pretty decent trade for both of us. I just wanted an RB in that spot, and I don't think Meyers was going to start for me. So I think it was kind of a win-win trade for Ben. And Meyers is definitely a flex worthy in a league like ours where you can start up to 6 wide receivers. So overall, pretty good. It says rebuilding. If things break right, I could see Ben being a little bit more frisky than rebuilding, but it's going to be tough to push for a ship unless he's able to trades, multiple firsts for some high end pieces, which is always in play. That's why Dynasty is so much fun. It's because you can always get people who are willing to go balls to the wall and go for it all. So I think it'll be fun to watch your team, Ben. Good luck. Keep making moves, keep being active, and good things will happen. Peace out.